just remember being struck with this feeling of I would just rather be anywhere than where I am right now. And I just said, mate, I'm done with rugby. Like I've had enough. And I just went on Twitter and just said, thank you, rugby, for all you've given me. And, thanks. I didn't know who I was without footy. I didn't know what I was going to do. There was a time where I was driving, I had to pull the car over because I was like properly breaking down, crying. And I called someone and I said, bro, I need help. What am I missing? What am I trying to fill? What void am I missing? And I'm trying to fill it, right? So, bro, I'm scared of heights, but I started learning how to fly a helicopter, right? And, the good times don't last, but neither do the bad times.
Everybody, and welcome to another episode here on the Coach G Show. And today's guest is Australia's greatest World Cup try scorer of all time. 14 tries across 3 World Cups, 71 test matches, and 2 European Champions Cups with Toulon. But nobody tells you what happens when the jersey comes off. The identity crisis, the team meeting where he just got up, walked out and fired a tweet and called it quits. Today's guest is someone I went to war against on the Super Rugby field as well as international field. He's as real off it as he was dangerous on it. Welcome to the Coach G Show, Drew, brother. How's things going?
How's it, bro? Yeah, mate, I'm good. I'm mate, happy to talk to chat with you. I mean, it's been a little while. I know I've been pretty hard to tie down, but no, mate, very much looking forward to this chat.
Man, I don't blame you, being close to Bondi Beach, enjoying the sun and you having the privilege of wearing a budgie smuggler, for us props, it's tough wearing a budgie smuggler. Some of us will keep our t-shirt on when we're on the beach.
Right, it's all about maximum exposure, right? Get that vitamin D in. So the budgie smugglers all year round for us. But to be fair though, I do live across the road from Bondi, so it's a great spot. But bro, we're just talking about it before we started recording, but we're just getting into winter here in Oz, and it's look, it's not quite the same as European winter. Don't get me wrong, but once it turns cold, we start to whinge about
it. Well, I can't complain. Sun is starting to come out. As nice. In France, sunsets quite late. It's only starting to get dark at 10, and it's I won't lie to you, it's getting challenging because when I came back from South Africa in February, I kind of did a no alcohol pact. I lasted for about 50 days, and then the sun came out in Toulouse. Then I cracked up on a bottle of rosé. So I've been off the juice again, but I don't think it's going to last long because with the summer coming, the rosé needs to come
bro, like, it's all about balance, mate. Don't do it to yourself because then you feel like you let yourself down once you have a nice couple of little glasses of rosé in an afternoon. Just a bit of balance. Make sure, there's if you've earned the right, you go out, do a little bit of training, get the heart rate up, then enjoy a nice little glass.
Yeah, I still do my training. One of my former colleagues would say, gee, I see you training, but I don't see the results.
Well, that's it, right? It's always just input in and output. It's just if you keep it the same, you stay the same, so that's fine. But I'm a little bit the same, mate. My relationship with training, it was when I was playing, it was I didn't really love training. I did it well because it meant that it enabled me to get selected for teams that meant something for me, right, or to me. So then when I retired, not having the accountability, not having the motivation, the carrot of a domestic or an international jersey, all those things, like I had to sort of sit down and have a think about my relationship with training, because it wasn't something I enjoyed, but at the same time, there was a lot of upside when I did go and work out, like the physical side, but also the mental health side. The aesthetic side as well is always nice to look nice. So it's one of those things. I find myself now, I can lock in training for 3 months and go hard and with that nutrition, all that sort of stuff. But then I achieve a goal and then I'll just go, okay. And then the guys at the gym won't see me for another 3 months and I'll go hard on the other side, right? I have too many drinks and I'll blow back out. I get to the point where I don't like what I look like in the mirror and then go hard again. So I'm a bit more of a yo-yo sort of trainer these days.
Oh man, I'll be honest with you. That sounds like me. I pick up weight, I lose weight. I'm like
Yeah.
my former coach used to call me a concertina. It's like he just sees this musical
Yeah.
instrument blowing up, going quite in.
Yeah, well, you know what? Michael Checker said the same thing about me. Like, I mean, there's good and bad to it, right? Because I would put weight on quickly. So in off seasons, or when I was sort of a little bit relaxed with things, or even if I was injured or whatever, and not able to train as much, and my diet wasn't quite right. But at the same time, I'd also lose it really quickly. So in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, it's all right. I can afford to blow out a bit because 2 weeks of hard training, I'm back in shape. So yeah, I mean, look. That's not that being said. Like 2015 Rugby World Cup, when I got picked back from France, Gits and I was about 95 and a half kilos, and Czech put me in Fat Club until I got down to 93 kilos. He's like, and it was only me and Will Skelton, right? Will Skelton was probably
Oh
about
my
156
goodness.
kilos, and I was 95, and we both had to do extras after each training session until we got down to our goal weight. And he wouldn't pick me until I hit that. So I missed the first game against Fiji, and then played thereafter. But yeah, I mean, it's again, like, you wouldn't get away with it now. I don't think they can call them fat clubs now. I think everyone's a little bit too sensitive. But if you're in the group that's going there training at 6 in the morning to get extra cardio in, it's because you're too fat.
Yeah, we used to call it the Chubb Club at the Bulls.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
You didn't want
Mate,
to
you
go
know
to the
what?
Chubb
Like,
Club.
it's an endearing name. It's also something that you want to avoid. So, like, there's always motivation there. And if you're happy enough to get up at 6 and go and do a little bit extra, then enjoy the cake.
It's funny you mentioned we all play at the highest level, and we achieved some great things. And you spoke about like the training. You didn't like the training part about
Mm,
it, but you enjoyed the reward of it. I mean, everybody's different. Some guys like PSPs, they love the training. They would get
yeah.
stuck into it, and Victor Matfield. But a lot of us, we also trained hard because we knew that the benefit we would get. And that's for some of us, it carries in to life after rugby. For example, my relationship with training now is just more from a mental health side,
Yeah.
and I agree with you from time to time when there comes a goal. So I had at the stages objective playing in a paddle tournament. I got stuck into paddle, good run. I got a
Ah,
few
right. Yeah. Okay.
injuries. Still loving it. I always laugh when I play against the young guns. They see this big old fat bloke. And it's like, are we going to smash him? But I just return everything. They call me the wall. And
Yeah. Right.
it was
Just
funny.
get it back.
About a few weeks ago, I played with a friend and I managed to execute 2 shots in between my legs for the first time.
Oh, wow.
And the guy,
Jeez.
yeah, I don't know. I did it. Don't know. I don't think I'll be able to reproduce it. Brother, you've had an unbelievable career. And I think, obviously you scored some crazy tries. And man, I used to hate you on the field because you always used to find those little spaces and outrunners. And, the Aussies weren't very nice to the South Africans. When you guys saw overlap, you guys would just shout, retard, retard, and, stuff like that. It wasn't nice, man. But we always had some good times off the field. But what a lot of people don't know, you were practically playing half blind. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. So I'm clinically blind in my right eye. So I was born with a number of different cataracts in my right eye. So, when I was first born, obviously you do all the tests and stuff. And now also keep in mind this was 42 years ago, right? So technology wasn't what it is today. So, but yeah, so we started to do some tests and things, and there was a bit of an issue with my right eye. So back in those days, as a young kid and sort of early sort of infant years, I would have to sit in front of the TV, like when it was family TV time, and I'd have a pirate patch over my good eye to try and encourage, the side of my right eye. And it was never going to happen because it wasn't one of those types of, I guess, ailments. But I would get upset. I'd cry because I couldn't see the TV. So I just, what's the point? I'd go off to my room with my little pirate patch, probably hit a wall or a hallway or something on the way down. But then it kind of, yeah, and back then as well, like I used to have the thickest lens in my right eye, right? So again, because of the technology hadn't advanced to where it is now, like it was literally the thickness of the bottom of a Coke bottle or something, right? Like, whereas this one was just normal. And I'd have to go to school and, and sit up at the front of the class and wear my glasses and that sort of stuff. And then, as I got to high school, it wasn't cool. I was at an all-boys school and I didn't want to be the one that got picked on. So I just didn't wear my glasses, sit at the back, swinging on my chair. And then parent teacher interview. My mum would go in there and just speak to my teachers, and they'd say, "Oh, is Drew wearing his glasses?" And the teachers, of course, were like, "What? Drew has glasses?" And so you could be sure that I got a bit of a wallop when I got home, and then next day, glasses on, front row seat. But anyway, so it was sort of one of those things that I just had to learn how to deal with it. So when I first started playing, I started playing rugby league early, and I have to play on the right hand wing because at that point I hadn't learned because I had no peripheral here. So if I didn't turn my head, there'd be times where I'd running down the sideline and just get whacked because I didn't see anything coming right. But then over time, and once you're in a position a number of times, I just learned to turn my head a little bit more, right? And I think if you look back in a lot of different pictures, like I squint a lot in my right eye. I don't know, it's almost like zooming in or focusing on my good eye. It was doing all the work, right? But it was also one of those things, mate. Like I just never told anyone in rugby because there's always 50-50 calls where there's a coach sort of considering whether it was me or someone else. And I just felt like even if it was 50-50 or whatever, if they just knew that, oh, this kid's blind in his right eye, it was just probably enough for them to go with someone else. And I just never wanted to use it as an excuse. It wasn't like something I had to adapt after an incident or an accident or something later in life. Like I didn't know anything otherwise, perfect vision into what is my vision now. So it was I just didn't say anything. And then as it plays out, mate, I wouldn't have passed my medical in France if I didn't lie through that either. They wouldn't have insured my contract because after 2 years, I signed my first deal was 2 years, and then I got another, re-signed for another 2. And I had to go do other medicals. And I had a bit of an issue. I had to get my left eye because my left eye started to fatigue because it was just doing all the work. And so I needed to go and get a lens adjustment or contact lenses for my good eye. But that's when my team doctor, realized that, oh, Drew, you're blind in your right eye. And I was like, stupid. Because, there was that young boy that I think playing Pro or something who's wearing the goggles and they wouldn't allow him to do it. Yeah. I think he's playing in Italy, but they wouldn't allow him to play in France and stuff. So I just kept quiet and I just, obviously had a lot of trust in this person at the time that was involved in the club. So, mate, it was just... I mean, it's one of those things, man. Like, there's people that play with different things, whether it's either injuries that you carry on or whatever. But I just never saw it as a disadvantage because I just never knew anything different. But I did know that potentially it could be used against me, so I just kept it quiet. And now I still to this day only wear a contact lens in my good eye. This one, if I was a young fella now and I had the same thing, they'd be able to just laser it out, right? But at that time, they just didn't have that technology, so it was never an option for me. And now because the information chain between the eye and the brain to computer picture has just been sort of turned off, if I got the cataracts removed now, then there still wouldn't be an image there that would be the same as the left eye. So I just left it.
Jeez, now I feel even worse because when you would step me back in the day, you were only doing it with one eye.
I remember there was one time we were playing against you for the Bulls and I was running down the left-hand touchline. I stepped in just right last minute and I thought you could have just absolutely iced me. And I saw you really late because you were just coming from my right side as well. I just thought I'd step the last guy. And I reckon it would have... I probably felt the wind of you just going past me. And if you had got me, I know that for sure you would have just absolutely broken me.
Oh man, listen, this is actually inspiration because if you think about it, I'm actually reading now the book by Angela Duckworth, Grit, and they talk about deliberate practice and purpose, and a lot that you just shared there. Because easily as a young player coming up through the ranks, obviously you had the skill set, you had the talent, everything, but there must have maybe been at some stage where you said, listen, what is the goal here? Because at some stage, being blind in the one, half blind in the one eye, it's going to be an obstacle. I won't be able to compete at that level. So what interests me is what did you do? You mentioned quite a few things that you did. You trained your left eye as well. Mm-hmm. But what did you do in that period, especially coming through when you said, listen, I want to go all the way with rugby. I want to play at the highest level. What was the driving force behind you? And what were the things that you did to make sure that being half blind in one eye didn't become an obstacle? And I think there's a lot of things that you just mentioned. You sense, you felt me coming.
Yeah.
So if you can maybe take us back to that mindset, where you change things, where you made that decision, is not going to be an obstacle for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those. I think it's a lot to do with the environment that I was in, right? Like I'm the youngest of three boys. I've got really supportive parents that always enabled me to be involved in whatever I wanted to, but never really pushed me to a point where I was doing things that I didn't want to do. And it kind of got to a point where, mate, I, which is really weird because I'm certainly not that now, but I was the kid, in the park on the weekend with like a truck tire wrapped around a rope and, with a belt around doing sprints and things, right? Like I was really self-motivated as a young guy. Obviously I had a lot of discipline, but that was my sort of upbringing with it. My father was a soldier in the army. So it was very disciplined. It was very regimented. It was routine. It was structured. And it was, I had two older brothers as well, so I was always trying to catch up with them and beat those guys in anything that we did. I just never. I think my parents also just never allowed me to use it as an excuse. They knew that it was probably something that hindered me to a degree, but it would have been more if they allowed it and I allowed it to be bigger than it was. And I think if you put energy into something, whether it's positive or negative, it becomes bigger. So if it's a negative and then you put more energy into it, it becomes even more negative and it has more of an impact and it holds you back further. But at the same time, if it's something positive and you put your energy into that, then really great things can come from that as well. So I mean, it was sort of you know teenage years. I was playing rugby league. I went to a secondary school called St Pat's in Shorncliffe. They offered rugby union, so I was playing both of those from the ages of 13 to 17. And just got my first taste in representative teams in when I was 16. I made like a Queensland B team, got picked for the Australian under-16s from there. And that was kind of when it was like, you know what, yeah, I can make this. Because my school at that time, like I was the first player to be picked for an Australian team from my school. So like it wasn't really like a pathway school at that point. Like there's been many more since I've been at school now. Geez, it's 25 years since I've been at school, bro. Jesus.
I can't remember anything.
Yeah. I mean, I was not the greatest student. Well, this is the other thing as well, right? Because I wasn't a great student, but my parents could see. They didn't worry too much. Like I was bright without being, like the brightest in the class, but they could just see that I had the ability to lock in on something that I was interested in. And I think that they just knew whether it was rugby, if rugby worked out for me, great. If it didn't, I still had the capacity to lock in on something and just give it absolutely everything. So they never really worried too much with the grades I was getting, or, just how much of it I was retaining and things, because, as I said, I could get by, but I was sort of the top of the bell curve, right? Like I was pretty average at wasn't the best in class, wasn't the worst in class, somewhere in the middle there. But I had the ability to lock in and just focus on something and just give absolutely everything to it. And that's why I think my parents, didn't worry so much and, about I mean, look, I still got a number of good stern talking tos and a couple of belts around the arse. But, like I think overall they kind of knew that, a book kind of environment was never one for me. It was probably a bit more practical. But yeah, I mean, so then, once I started making a representative team, I was like, you know what? When you think about it, like you're not that far away. There's a number of different sort of state teams. And then once you make an Australian team, you're like, okay, if I can just keep working on my craft and keep going on this sort of trajectory, then, why is this out of the realms of possibility for me?
Look, I can definitely relate there. So I grew up with great parents, and my parents didn't put unnecessary pressure on me as well. They kind of facilitated, gave me great guidelines and advice. And my dad always told me, your attitude determines your altitude. Are there any gems that your parents, seeing that your dad being a soldier, having been a soldier, that he shared with you? Listen, if you want to really achieve something, what should you be doing? Is there anything that he shared with you?
I mean, not in terms of like quotes, but like mine, it was always respect. Like respect, I think is a really big thing. You've got to have respect for, respect for yourself, respect for your peers, like your teammates or your students, whatever environment you're in. Respect for your coaches or those that are teaching you or whatever, because I think it's really important to be coachable. right? Like I think, sometimes, especially in those teenage years where you're too cool and you think you've got the answers to everything. Man, if there was times, man, like there was times where I remember a game when I was young. I was playing rugby league and I got put into touch and I just went, fuck. And I was young. I was 13 or something. And I just got this whack on the top of my head, and I was like, oh. And my dad was the touch judge, the referee's assistant, right? And he had the flag and just went whack. And he goes, I beg your pardon. He said, I beg your pardon. He goes, I'll talk to you after the game. He's like, you don't speak like that on the field. You don't speak anywhere. Like there was no swearing in my household. There was none of that sort of stuff. So in terms of the gems, Dad wasn't necessarily like there's no quotes that struck with me. It was more traits. It was hard work. It was the discipline. It was the respect for those around you, respect for yourself and the position and the opportunities that you get. Just respect, because I think respect as well. Respect is built. Respect and trust and these things are built over many small little actions, but it can be lost over one, right? Like so, it's just something that is, it's once you get it and once you have it and once you hold it. If it only takes one little thing for you to lose it, right? Like if you don't respect the opportunity, the situation, yourself, or those around you, then all of a sudden you lose that respect, and it's bloody hard to get back, and it's definitely hard to get back to the same level.
No, I think that's brilliant what you just shared there. I think that's something we don't talk enough about these days, respect. We see with the new generation, they are talented, they are skillful. And even if you look at South Africa, at schoolboy level, these guys become stars before they even finish schools. People from abroad are taking selfies with these kids. These kids got sponsorship deals once they leave school. We just saw the young Marcus Miller in South Africa that made his debut for the Stormers. Quick one, before we get into it, I'm proud to welcome USN as a sponsor of the podcast. USN is a global leader in sports nutrition, and I've trusted their products since my playing days. And now we're reconnecting in this new chapter. Their message is simple: find your greatness, because champions don't leave performance to chance, they fuel it. Big thanks to USN for backing the show. Now let's get stuck into today's episode. But what I want to talk about is I had one of your good friends, Ali Williams, as well on the show. And he was a footballer. So, I asked him this question, but why transition to rugby? And I was expecting this amazing response. And he just said, mate, being a young man, I just realized chicks dig rugby players, and it was that simple.
Of course, that's Ali's answer. Of course it is. He's a good man, Ali Williams.
Oh, great man. And, being in Australia, a lot of people don't always realize this, but you guys are rugby union, is competing with a lot of sports with Aussie rules and rugby league. So obviously with your talent and your skill set, you potentially could have had a great career in rugby league as well, but why make the switch to rugby union?
Yeah, I mean, look, I played a lot growing up. So my dad was from Victoria, which is largely AFL. So he grew up playing AFL. I had 3 years playing AFL when I was very young because we were based on an army base down in Victoria. So there was no other sport offered other than AFL. So I had 3 years of that. Mate, if you saw my kicking later in my career, you'd know that AFL wasn't for me. But I played rugby league again. What my brothers were doing is what we started with, and I enjoyed it. But for me, it was when I went to secondary school at 13, so grade 8 here in Australia. They only offered rugby union at school, so I was playing both on the weekends. I was like Friday night rugby league, Saturday schoolboy rugby union, and I just started to enjoy rugby union more. And you know what I think it was? What it became is that, mate, I was spending 2 hours a week at training at rugby league, like on a Tuesday night and a Thursday night, and then playing on a Friday night. Whereas the bond that I was getting with those guys at schoolboy rugby, it was, we were at school at 8 in the morning, and then you go through to the school day at 3 p.m. and then you got training until probably 5 p.m. Like I just got to know those boys more, man. So the bond was deeper. It was more meaningful. We were going through 13 to 17. It was like we were going through puberty together, first kiss, talking stories about your first kiss and your this and your first that. And, it's like we're failing at school or we're passing. There was joys, there was sad times, and there was just a deeper bond for me. And I think one of the things that you miss, when you retire from footy is that connection, that daily sort of connection that you have, and the bonds that you forge through hardships and through joyous times, and all of these things that test you as a human, but like you come together because of it. And so I genuinely think like my time in rugby union, well, my continued time after I finished school was because of those bonds at school. Like I still think, some of my most favorite treasured times playing rugby union was schoolboy rugby. Like, and bro, we won one game in my senior year. So we weren't not like we were like killing it and just like everything was great and that's why I loved it. Like we struggled, right? Like, but that one game that we won against Villanova, I still remember it. Like that was the first game our first 15 won in like 10 years. So like you could imagine like that night, so that was, then I finished school. I started playing sort of Colts rugby, and I started to have to face the decision of sort of rugby league and rugby union. I was approached by an agent actually, and he just said to me, he said, Drew, rugby league you can play in Townsville and Newcastle, which is sort of regional towns in Australia. Rugby union you can play in Paris and London. And I was like, that to me, that's enough for me to go to rugby union. And part of the reason also why I went to France sort of, when I was 29, sort of nearing the back end of my career, because I was like, this game of ours offers us these global opportunities. I'd be mad if I didn't take it at one point, right? So that was a big reason as to why I went to rugby.
And we can definitely see it with the bond you developed over the years with the Gits, Matt Guiteau, and Adam Ashley Cooper. You guys are inseparable. The Three Musketeers. On the field, you guys were together. Off the field, you guys were together. So this is my big question. Are you guys still living together, or do you guys are living in the same street?
No, sadly not. Sadly not. Well, Adam was living in Bondi. He's moved up to the Northern Beaches, probably about 45-minute drive away. But Matt lives down in Canberra, so he's three hours down the road. But I mean, look, we do have a great relationship, the three of us, and Matt. We do a podcast together as well. Matt drives every Monday 3.5 hours to do the podcast for 2 hours and then drives home straight after. So like a big effort from him. But I just, what I love about that is, like when you're playing, you're basically in each other's pockets 24/7, right? Like you're training together, you're on buses, you're in hotels, you're on planes, you're basically living a life together. And then when you retire, the opportunity to see each other and hang out with each other and test yourselves with each other, challenge, all these things, it just dissipates and you don't have that. And so for us to we started this podcast, and I think selfishly, the thing I enjoy about it most is that I get to catch up with two of my best mates every single week, and it's locked away. Families are signed off on it. I mean, I'm single, so I don't have to worry about it, right? But like, the other boys got kids and wife and all that sort of stuff, but it's signed off, like we get time together, which I think is really important as well. Like when, we're all different. I think the transition, I don't think it ever stops. I don't think it's got a full, like an exclamation point or a full stop after a certain amount of years. I think what I was missing in my first year of retirement is different after 5 years. It's different now in 9 years, and I'm sure it'll be different, in 10 years' time as well. Like there's just elements that you just can't replicate. And, and the world after rugby it's a different place. It can be difficult, but it can also be amazing as well. I think we always talk about, when we hear about the struggle and the difficulties of it, like which there are that, right? There are that, but there's also some really cool positives that come from not playing anymore, and the time that we get that we never used to have, the ability to go to different things and experience that with people that we never used to be able to. Like, bro, how many birthdays or weddings or family things or like births or whatever it might be, like how many things did you miss? Like when you're retired, you've got a little bit more of the capacity to kind of say yes to things and do that. So while there are there is the downside, there's also tremendous upside as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize, especially when you play international level, you're away from home so much. Yeah. And I remember there
Yeah.
was a stage when I was playing in Toulouse, and obviously back then I didn't think I'd play for South Africa again. And
Mm.
obviously Heineken may change the rules similar to what you guys would think at
Yeah.
Toulon.
Yeah.
And you ended up spending, I'm living in France, I relocated my family to France, and then all of a sudden you're spending 16 weeks away from home.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Mostly
ridiculous.
back in
And
South Africa. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And I even saw that as a coach, when I was a full time coach at La Rochelle, and obviously made the decision to, because my kids, their lives is in Toulouse. So I was in La Rochelle. So, and I actually realized
Hmm.
now being back, now taking time off, obviously looking for a new coaching gig. But in
Yeah.
this time, I actually realized how much I missed and what's going on. And you just
Mm.
touch base there. We all follow a different journey after rugby, and it's great to see what Conrad and a lot of the former players, I think what's the Global
The
Players
global, yeah,
Foundation,
I
what
just
they
went to
yeah,
a function with Griggs and Dan Carter on Friday. Actually, they're doing some great things
yeah,
for that as well. Yeah.
yeah. So I think what people don't realize, everybody's journey is different after rugby. Like you just mentioned, I think that's the great thing about rugby. You still got your mates, and that's something which I miss a lot because we still got our WhatsApp groups going from
Yeah.
2007 with the Barks and the Bulls of the
Yeah.
glory days. And obviously, me being in France, I'm not always available, but I always catch up
Yeah.
with the guys when I go back. But take me through the time where that transition after rugby, and we're going to come back now to your career. But everybody experiences it differently, and I've shared this openly.
Mm.
At times, for me, it was tough, that transition. Not everybody has the luxury of becoming a pundit or becoming a CEO of the company. A lot of
Yeah. Yeah.
players they followed that route. So, how did you experience life after rugby?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, mine was pretty sudden. You kind of touched on it on the intro. Like, I was 33. Like, I probably could have played for a number of years after, after I did. But I mean, I was sitting there. There's about 3 months left of the season. I was speaking to Toulon to maybe extend. I was speaking to some Japanese clubs about potentially going there, and we were reviewing a game, and I just remember being struck with this feeling of I would just rather be anywhere than where I am right now. Like, and like to to be at that level week in, week out, like it takes a lot of you, right? And I just in that moment, I just felt like I just didn't have any more to give, or it's especially for another season or more. And so I walked out of that team meeting and I said to Gits, I said, "Bro, I'm done." He goes, "No, no, no, we've still got Jim." And I went, "No, no, no, like I'm done." Like he goes, "What?" Because Gits is 2 years older than I am as well. And I just said, "Mate, I'm done with rugby. Like I've had enough." And I just went on Twitter and just said, "Thank you, rugby, for all you've given me." And thanks. And just went bang. Just because I just knew that if I spoke to my family, or if I spoke to my agent, friends, or whatever, they'd try and talk me out of it, right? No, no, no. It's like, maybe it's not that. Just give some time. Maybe get over to Japan and see how you feel or whatever. And I just wasn't prepared for that. Or to do that. And I just was like, no, I'm going to back this feeling because I think your lasting memories of things is often your most recent. And if I went somewhere or stayed in Toulon or whatever and I was doing it for the wrong reasons, then I would have had this sort of disdain towards rugby. And mate, rugby gave me so much. And I didn't want to be in a position where I was hating rugby at the end and end up speaking negatively about it or thinking negatively about it because I stayed too long and for the wrong reasons. So I just went tweet live. I went into the gym. The owner, Murad Boujalel, he came down. He's like, basically, what the fuck? And I was like, don't worry about those negotiations. We're fine. And I just had those 3 months. I had those 3 months to finish my career and enjoy those 3 months. We ended up losing the top 14 final against Clermont that year, but mum and dad were over in Paris for it. And I don't know, it was just like a nice ending for me. But at the same time, going back to, I didn't have any study behind me. I didn't continue studies after school. Wasn't, as I said, it wasn't really something I enjoyed. I didn't have a career to go to. I didn't have a huge amount financially. I didn't have assets. Like I was, bro, I'm the quintessential of what not to do, right? So I am rich in memories and rich in stories, but not so much in assets. But that's so far. That's all right. But it just sort of meant that I came home without a plan. And but I just knew again, I have this drive and I have this like internal belief that I'll be fine. Like I'll make something work, whatever it is. I didn't know what it was going to be at that point, but I'll get an opportunity and I'll make the most of that opportunity. And in the first instance, I got a pay per play, like per appearance, opportunity on commentary. Started doing that. Then the following year, I got a 3-year deal. So I was like, okay, perfect. Like this, and because it's not so time consuming commentary, right? It's a lot of weekend stuff and maybe one night a week. But during the week, like I had so much time off, which I enjoyed because after being so committed for so long, like having time off was like kind of what I needed. I felt like I deserved it. I earned it. But fast forward a year and a half, I felt like, okay, this time off is becoming detrimental because I don't have structure. I don't have routine. I don't have accountability, responsibility, all these things that training rugby and trying to earn selection each week gave me. And I felt like my decisions were slipping a little bit. And then it was also like a little bit probably around my mental health and motivation and my drive and things. And I just remember having a conversation with someone. Like I sat down and had a real honest think to myself, what am I missing? What am I trying to fill? What void am I missing? And I'm trying to fill it, right? And to me, it was adrenaline and the application of skill and the structure and routine, right? So I didn't, you hear, athletes from all different sports, you try and fill that void with unsavory things, right? Drugs, gambling, drinking, infidelity, all these sort of things that inevitably cost you a lot financially, but also in life and in happiness and in joy. So I was like, I don't want to go down that path. So I thought, okay, what can I do that is application of skill, repetition of skill, but also ticks the adrenaline box? So, bro, I'm scared of heights, but I started learning how to fly a helicopter. Right?
What the hell? Saw that?
I know.
The hell?
Yeah. So I went out to Bankstown, which is like a smaller airport here in Sydney, and mate, for that 1 hour, a couple of times a week, I'd get the adrenaline spike that I needed. Like I did just mate, like it got to a point where I'm controlling this aircraft, and at that point I'm not that good at it. But you've got I've got my sort of one hand on a controller, I've got this one on like a bit of a like a handbrake, but also accelerator. Both feet have got a controller. So the application of that skill and using my brain in a way that like one action has a secondary action and a tertiary action on the other thing, and you like there was no door on the side. I only had an over the shoulder like seatbelt. Where does it go like this? And so it kind of to me it ticked those boxes of the things that I was missing, right? And that's probably one thing I'm most proud of myself. And I think you should always, I don't think it's you're big noting by saying you're proud of yourself for something. I think we should all do it more. But I'm proud of myself in the sense that I've got good self awareness. Like in terms of what I'm missing. And what am I doing to try and fill that void? Is it unsavory or is it positive? And if it is unsavory to a degree, then I'll check myself and put it into something more positive. And anyway, so that was probably the first 12 to 18 months of my retirement. Fast forward another 4 years or so, like I'm in commentary still. I probably did 6 years of commentary, but I knew there's like a bit of a relationship breakdown with myself and the guy that was sort of making the decisions at the commentary. That became like untenable from his end. He didn't want to sort of address it, which is fine. And so I started to go, okay, my time in commentary, because we're only a one broadcast channel here in Australia, right? Like we don't have multiple that do it. So you only have that one option or that's it. So I'm like, okay, well, my time's running out. So the last year of my contract, I started asking around about like what sort of industries I think I might like. And bro, like that was a question I just didn't like. I don't know if you're the same because I didn't have an answer to it. And I felt almost a bit ashamed, a bit embarrassed, a bit scared of that question because I just didn't know how to answer it. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Everyone's like, what are you passionate about? And I would say, well, what I've just finished, like anything that I'd think about doing, it paled in comparison in terms of how passionate I was about it or excited to jump into it or how much confidence I had in myself to add to that, right? So I just really avoided that question a lot. But once I faced it, I had some really good friends and people in my network that would help me sort of ghost them, for a week here in that industry. Okay. And it became more of a process of elimination. Okay. That's not for me. That's not for me. That's not for me. And then, through different conversations, you sort of start to narrow it down. And I started doing some commercial real estate, got my license for that. Commercial real estate more so because, open homes in residential are normally on the weekends, and I was still doing commentary. So this allowed me to work Monday to Friday, have that structure and routine, and then do the commentary on the weekends. And then I guess to my current role, so the reason I also went into that as well, what I was talking about in terms of Monday to Friday having not much on, I started to realize I need something on Monday to Friday. I need structure. I need routine. Like I said, I was a military family. I went to an all boys private school. I'm in a rugby environment where it's, be here, wear this, do this, or eat that, like everything's structured and routine. And I went from that to living a life of like, do what you want from Monday to Friday, right? Like, and all those hours in between, it's up to me. So I felt like I needed structure and routine again. But also the other thing I needed was to chase outcomes because, bro, like you do commentary, other than a few people on Twitter saying that you're shit and you turn off your microphone, there's no outcome with my performance as a commentator, right? So there was no win, there was no loss individually, but also collectively as a team, there wasn't a win or a loss. Of course, there's like subjective opinion on it, but there was no definite sort of outcome. So I was missing that. And that's why, again, I went into commercial real estate because, bro, you get a listing, you put a game plan together, you get all the information about the asset or the market or whatever it might be. You implement that, you go through and you execute that game plan, and you'll have an outcome. Like you may not sell it, go back, review, work out why you didn't, what went wrong, what could you have done better. Or if you get, the price that the vendor wants, bang, then you go out and you celebrate. Like, so it was sort of, it filled the void of the things that I was missing in the last sort of couple of years. And so that's kind of where I am now. But I've kind of gone from selling, like, bro, I was selling like fuel stations and childcare and daycare centers and fast food restaurants and things. And that wasn't me, right? Like, it was good to learn the craft, but that wasn't my network. My network didn't own those assets, right? So now I sell pubs. Yeah.
And
So,
obviously
like,
you got to go visit you got to verify each pub. It's great quality.
bro, 100%. I've got to go in. It now justifies me going to pubs on 10 a.m. on a Monday or a Tuesday morning. But no, I quite enjoy it. Like, it's more my wheelhouse. I know a lot more people sort of in that pub industry just through my course of my career, and often it's a bit awkward going to try and sell someone a pub and you've been kicked out of their venue when you're about 20 years old or something. But no, yeah, I mean, it's like, it's cool. It's pubs and hotels, but mostly pubs. But yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying it. And yeah, I mean, to have that, but also to have the podcast with the boys, I feel like I've got a good little bit of balance around sort of corporate life, but also, that connection and footy life as well.
Oh, you gave me quite a bit there to chew on, and thanks for sharing that. Because and well done on how you reinvented yourself, and you've always like been a free spirit. You've always been the guy with high energy on the field, off the field, and was very intoxicating. Is brilliant. And what I wrote here is a few key things, and I think which has always served you in your career as a player. When you were locked in on something, you knew what to do. You were deliberate. You what we call deliberate practice. You were doing certain things that knew would bring you a certain result, even though if you didn't enjoy it. But I think this is important where we lack is routine and structure. So I anticipated this transition period for me as a coach. Like you spoke about, sometimes you got to sit down and be brutally honest with. So I did that a few years ago when I was at La Rochelle. I was saying, okay, I'm the scrum coach. Great. We have won 2 back-to-back European champions, but like, where am I going? My family's sitting 4 hours away. What am I doing with my life? Is just being a scrum coach sufficient for me? And I was like, no, I want to be a forwards coach, so head coach. But most importantly, I want to be in a position where I can impact people. But at that stage, I didn't know it. But so I knew when I decided to, call quits at La Rochelle, I knew that this year was going to be a tricky year, but I had a clear plan in place. I knew that's why I started the podcast in my last year as a coach. I started the podcast, which was Lessons from the Game back then. Now it's the Coach G Show. I knew with everything that I've shared, that I said, okay, now I need to actually create concrete things. That's why a lot of people have been seeing my social media's change, because I've actually pushed the Scrum Dominator mindset, which I've created and founded years ago. But it's chasing the outcomes. You just mentioned it there. It's about chasing the outcomes. But I think it's also important when you finish rugby, it sounds cliche, but it's about being clear on that that purpose of what you want to
Yeah.
do, who you're doing it
Yeah.
for. And I think there's a lot of people, they get confused between purpose and success. So,
Yeah.
when the people are chasing success, they want to earn a certain amount of money, they want to get a certain status. But purpose is about the impact you have on others,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that is important. I can see you doing that through your podcast. But what I want to come back to is that you mentioned there were times, obviously at some mental health. Was there anything that you experienced? I realize now, looking back, because obviously I'm a bit more wise, but there were times I was potentially depressed.
Yeah.
I lost my identity. I didn't know how to deal with it, and kind of lost track of everything. Did you experience something similar back then?
Yeah, bro. Yeah, weirdly, I developed some type of social anxiety when I finished. Right, so like I'd be here, and friends of mine would say, "Let's meet at North Bondi at a restaurant there," and I couldn't walk in if I was the first one in our group there. Like I did, it wasn't that everyone was turning to look at me as I walked into the door, but I just felt like they might. Right, like, and it wasn't because I played footy; it was just because I just. I think because of that question before about what are you passionate about, what do you want to do, I didn't have those answers. So I was like insecure about it because I didn't know who I was without footy. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know if that conversation was going to come up with someone and I'd just be awkward about it. And it sort of really started to develop from just social anxiety into like a full blown anxiety, right? Then also like there's other things that go on in life, and whether it's stress with finances or with relationships and things. And there was time like I've spoken about it before, but like there was a time where I was driving, I had to pull the car over because I was like properly breaking down, crying, like, and for no real apparent reason, right? Like I was, I'm generally pretty up and upbeat, but I'm also someone that I think is really vulnerable and can be soft and can also be really open and transparent about things as well. And I remember in that moment I had to pull the car over and I called someone and I said, "Bro, I need help." And and I think at that moment I just felt like a bit of relief. And I think when I first, well, let me just go back a few more years, because when I first retired, I knew that it was going to be tough. You hear about all these things about former players from all different sports, and the I guess I just sort of saw them as potholes, right? Things that could bring you down. You can get stuck in it. You can get deeper the more you try and fight your way out of it if you didn't have the right tools. So rather than me get into one of those situations, and then have to equip myself with the tools and get out, I thought, okay, I'm going to go see a therapist, and I'm going to get the tools to identify it and avoid it before getting deep into it. Right now, that's obviously a great plan, but it's also not fool's gold. But I'm so glad I did that. I know there's a bit of stigma attached around therapy and all that sort of stuff as men, but I think that's all just bullshit. And I wish I'd done it so much earlier in my career and throughout my career, because for just going and speaking to someone that's completely unknown to you is really weird, that you just speak completely open and honest. You don't feel like you're getting judged. And because any advice I was getting in life decisions or direction and things like that were coming from my nearest and dearest, right? Mum and dad and my brothers and my best friends. But all that advice, to the best of their ability, was still biased, right? So it was like not necessarily what I needed to hear in some of those moments, because they love me, right? So they're not going to sit there and maybe be as brutal as what someone who you don't know and who's also got the tools. Like, so yeah, I just sort of started seeing my therapist as my life coach, right? Because, bro, we had coaches or teachers for everything from walking, crawling, ABC 1, 2, 3, to passing the ball, tackling, scrummaging, anything. But in life, you don't have a teacher in that, right? Other than your nearest and dearest. And like I said, some of their advice is biased. So I just sort of I just repositioned that role as a life coach in my mind, right? And then so I was like, okay. And I just learned so much about myself, like why I respond in certain situations like I do, why I'm keep doing the same type of response over and over, and why am I not learning from it? All these little things, like why am I like this in a relationship or a friendship or a coach or a teacher, student type of relationship, all these things just really come to surface, and you actually start to really learn about yourself and your personality and all these things. And I know that kind of like that's going like quite deep, because in that it then brought, fast forward back to where I was in that car and I was crying, I need help, because it's, there's times where it does overwhelm you. and it's also fine. Like, life is tough. Like, like it can be really hard, and you're not always going to be on top of it. And like the good times don't last, but neither do the bad times, right? Like the bad times don't also last. So it's just sort of like you've got to ride it, but you've got to equip yourself with the tools to make sure that that bad time isn't a prolonged time that is longer than it has to be. And also try and prolong the good times, right? Make sure that they go. Some things are out of your control, but some things, like we can certainly manage, for a better outcome.
No, I totally agree with you, and well done for doing that. And I always tell people, you got to speak to someone. I speak to someone on a regular basis as well. Where I can share my vulnerable self, be honest, and something that has been a massive eye opener for me as well. Drew, has been journaling. Sometimes things pop up which I didn't think about. Journaling and meditation. Just the other day I did a meditation and old memory, and I just broke into tears and I shared this openly. I thought of it, but then I could process it and, okay, what happened? Look where you are now. And I think that is so important. Well, listen, I know we can go on for ages. Like the way we're going now, we're going to go for a 3-hour pod. Thanks for sharing that. And it's so valuable, what you just shared, and I definitely know it will help a lot of former players. I was fortunate enough as well to help 1 or 2 players as well that were struggling with alcoholism, drug addiction. I was just there to give him guidance, and I think that's very important. I just want to say thanks to Conrad and all the guys from the Global Players Foundation, what they're doing as well, creating that network and that security. That is brilliant. I want to come back to your playing days, all right? Because I also want to come back to the character of who Drew Mitchell is. Listen, when you started out, you have a similar story to me. I almost didn't get selected for the South African under-21 team because I couldn't bench more than 100. And apparently you had a similar story when you started out with the Wallabies. You weren't the strongest or the most densest bloke around. Take us back to that period when you started out with the Wallabies.
Yeah, well, I mean, going back to my school, like we weren't like the biggest trainers. Like we had sort of a couple of training sessions in the afternoon. So I didn't go to the gym until I left school, and I went to the Reds Academy. And I remember my first gym session, I was like, bro, I was maxing out on 60 kilos, right? Like maxing out. And I remember Ty walked over and he said, oh, bro, I'll just warm up with you. And I was like, oh, I'm not warming up. I was like, oh, that's fine, I'm finished. It was my first set, but I was like, oh, I'm finished. You can have it. And I just walked off because I didn't want to get embarrassed. But I just, like at that time, mate, I started playing Super 12 back in those days. Like at 81 kilos, like I was so small and so weak, right? Like I would just and I was playing at 13 as well, which is an unfamiliar position for me, but we just had a lot of injuries, and the Jouberts and the Tanumangers and these guys I was opposing would just hold me up, and and my speed was my point of difference then, but not my strength. And they then sort of like quickly identified, because also I was weak in the tackle. So when I get to ground, you just get, because back in those days, rucks were pretty, it was a bit of a free for all compared to what they are now, like in terms of rules and going through gates and being able to use your feet and all that sort of stuff. But, I'd turn it over probably pretty regularly. And, so they identified, my coaches identified that I had to get stronger, and I put a lot of weight on really quickly. And then that started to sort of show its face a little bit in hamstring tears and all that sort of stuff. So I got there and I wasn't strong. I had assets in my arsenal, in my artillery, but strength, as you know, is so important. And, it wasn't until I probably filled out properly that I got bigger, and my speed was probably less of a point of difference for me. So then I was like, okay, well, what's going to be my point of difference now? And it then became, weirdly, it became my strength, but it wasn't bench strength. Like I've never been big on bench. I got little sort of spaghetti arms, bench bitch, but what I was strong at was sort of like thighs to your midriff, right? So to sort of your core. Like I was a big squatter, a power cleaner, snatcher, like those deadlifts, like those sort of. So when I could break a tackle, I could bump, or those sort of things. That then became my point of difference. I was still quick, but I wasn't Brian Abena quick. It wasn't. I was quick, and I could hold my own on international level, but it wasn't a point of difference. So then I had to find something else that could have been, and mine was, then it became for me, like my ability to break tackles.
Oh, brilliant. Well, that just shows you, when we identified we have certain weaknesses, if you're actually deliberate in what you're doing and, you can get that desired result or that outcome. And I read something, apparently George Gregan was very instrumental in your
Yeah.
transformation.
Yeah, well, see, and going back to like, getting the ball turned over. Like I just remember, like my first year, I was playing against the Brumbies, and again, I was a young guy, and I looked up to all these guys, right? And I just remember they were kicking the ball off to me, and all I would hear just behind the defensive line is George Gregan yelling out, "Apples, apples," and I was like, oh, just I could hear it, but I'm still sort of going to ground and going to the ruck and trying to get the ball back, maybe turning it over, and um, and well, he didn't expose what it was at that point. But later in the year, when I made my first Wallabies camp, someone mentioned apples. One of the Brumbies boys mentioned apples, like at a training session. I said, "Okay, what is that?" And they said, "Oh, because we identified you as an easy turnover, so for apple turnover." And bro, that broke my heart because I was rooming with Greeks. I was rooming with Greeks,
Yeah.
right? And like we had a meal that night, and I was just like, he was my captain, he's a guy I looked up to. And of course, what's said on the field is stays out there. Like I was, I'm a big advocate for that. But it was also like a little bit like, oh, like because it wasn't aimed at me to hurt me, right? There's banter in a game to kind of put someone off, but I didn't know what it meant. So that wasn't that kind of sledge. It was a sledge to identify to his teammates. We can go at this kid and we'll get the ball back, right? And so that like it almost felt more hurtful, but because it wasn't really about aim like to hurt me, it was about
Yeah.
exposing me in my game. But bro, but at the same time, I quickly realized that I didn't want to be apples moving forward. So that's also part of the reason why I put strength on and weight on. And, I didn't want to be apple turnover. But the funny thing is, later in my career, when I was a bit older and I was better in that area, and as a young kid that came in, you can bet your bottom dollar that I'd call him apples because I knew
Oh
the
my
impact he
good
could have,
apples.
right? Yeah.
It takes me back in the day, the Bulls. I remember when I just moved over to the Bulls, obviously came from the Cheetahs, and we were very fitness orientated. We were
Mm.
running, and myself and CJ van der Linde back then, we would have
Oh,
massive
yeah,
line
yeah.
breaks as props. And I just remember, like, Victor, for example, he would just shake his head when we were in the gym, and like obviously he was going way heavier than me, and it's like what's going on, G? If you want to play, you're the Bulls now, eh? Standards
Yeah.
are different, and I'll never forget. Also with training, and obviously there was a stage I wasn't like 100% fit, and I just remember Bakkies saying to me, "Hey G, if you want to hang out with the big dogs, you can't piss like a puppy, eh?" And that just stuck
Yeah,
with
right.
me.
Yeah,
So
well, bro,
that
like something does stick with you, right? But the people that you look up to and you respect, like it's got more weight, doesn't it?
Yeah, I just shared something with Scott in talking about rugby. A lot of players, they have different goals and stuff. And I played for a big driving force for me was my teammates. I wanted
Mm.
to show up for them and do my best for them. And I always referred to, after a game, if I played well, Victor would give me the wink, and Bakkies would give me the nod. If I got the wink
Yeah,
and the
right.
nod, then I
Yeah,
was
the
good. Then I
double.
could go out,
Yeah,
go have a
yeah.
few beers. Listen, I want to get into the mindset of Australian
Mhm.
rugby players because, oh my gosh, you guys talk a lot of shit on the field. You're like, when you play, you guys like, you don't hold back on the insults.
Yeah,
Listen,
yeah,
tell us about that, Bites, because it's not just with rugby. We've seen obviously with cricket back
yeah.
in the day,
Cricket.
but
Yeah, yeah.
I would the amount of chirping going on in a rugby match in Super Rugby back in the day. You guys, I was like, aren't you guys focused? What's going on? Take me
Yeah.
behind that a bit.
I don't know. I mean, look, I think it's just part of the culture of here in Oz, right? Like backyard, schoolyard kind of culture. It's not a. Look, I always just saw it as an opportunity to kind of maybe throw someone off their game, right? Like even if I were my friends, um, I remember, and I've said this a number of times, and he's a really close mate of mine. But Kurtley Beale he was the young guy that was, everyone was talking about him. But we played him over in Perth. I was playing for the Force, he goes to the Waratahs, and I ran through him for a try. And on the way back to the halfway line, I said, "Oh, didn't your shoulders make it across the Nullarbor, which is the desert between the east and the west coast?" And I just knew that it just got in his head. Lottie Takiri came over and gave me a push, like, "Oh, I'll leave him alone," type thing. And I just knew I got in his head. And I said, because this kid had all the skills, right? He had all the skills and he was carving us up. But then I just thought, okay, well, if we can't dominate him in that area, then we can try and get him in a mindset area, right? And if I'm making him think about something for even a split second, as opposed to what we should have been focusing on, then that was worthwhile, right? Like, I think there's always a line that you don't cross in terms of like things that you talk about on a field. There's like almost unwritten sort of laws around that, or more unwritten sort of respect, I think, within the game in terms of some things you just don't go down some areas. But bro, like, like if I could get an edge or if I see a little bit of a weakness, I'm pushing my thumb on that, like I'm gonna just keep opening up. And sometimes it backfires. Sometimes it doesn't matter. And sometimes it actually fires the opposition up or they feed off it. But and sometimes it's probably just pure out of entertainment than than anything out of performance. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just think sometimes as well, it's like in a fight, you want to be the one to throw the first punch. So I'd rather sledge you first before you get me.
A lot makes sense. And I'm starting to think if Henry Pollock doesn't have some Aussie DNA,
yeah, bro. I mean, I've seen some footage of him over the weekend. Like he's going pretty hard, isn't he?
Oh man, it's funny. I think I was never like that. Obviously, a lot of people would chirp me, but I remember in the final against Toulon back then was the young Kubriashvili. He was talking smack the whole time, and I spoke through my actions. But anyway, I was listening to a podcast the other day with Oxen Che. And he was talking about, obviously, with the Springboks, things for you. You won't care about this. It's the scrums. You guys don't give a shit. But anyway, he had, obviously, they are working hard. And he had Vincent Koch, his teammate. Mm-hmm. And he just said in the scrum, and like Vincent Koch had him. And then
you mean those Springbok teammates, but they're playing against each other domestically?
Yeah, they were playing against each other. They were training against each other. So obviously they want to prove a point. And then Ox just said, I've got him. Let's go. And then Vincent Koch was like, how does he got me? I got him at that moment of just confusion or doubt. Yeah. So it makes sense. It makes sense. But listen, everybody is different before game. We had Mornay Steyn. And I've shared this before on the podcast. Mornay Steyn once got chased. Like we were the Bulls. We had an auditorium. So like an hour and a half before kickoff, we would have our last pre-game meeting. Then you would go warm up stretches and stuff. And Mornay Steyn was always joking. He came in, mimicked the motorbike before. And we're all serious South Africans. Take me through your vibe before a game, because I've heard you are completely atypical. You have this ability to switch on, switch off just like that. What was your routine before the game?
So like a game day, I never had routine. Weirdly, when I talk, a lot of what this is spoken about is, our conversation tonight has been about structure and routine, but I didn't like that on game day. Because, if I had to have this for breakfast or have this much sleep in my afternoon nap or have this, have certain things and I didn't get it, I didn't want it to have the ability to derail my preparation. So I was like, if I feel like eating this, I'll eat it. If I feel like having a nap, I'll have a nap. I didn't want anything set in stone because you don't always get what you want when you're on the road or for whatever different reasons. And I'm like, for example, if I need a 2-hour nap in the afternoon before I go to the game and I don't get that, then all of a sudden I'm thinking, shit, I haven't had my sleep. I'm not prepared well enough. So my routine was just completely unstructured on a game day. But I'd known that I've done the preparation going into it. So I wouldn't think about the game all day because it'd get me, I'd start to feel those butterflies and those nerves. And I didn't want to feel that because I wasn't the type of player that could concentrate for a long period of time before the game and stay locked in mentally. Like I'd just be exhausted and I'd play the game in my head and, get out there and just not be at my best. So, and look, this is something through trial and error. Like this wasn't the first, my first professional game or first Wallaby game that I got it right. Like this is something that I kind of learned throughout the course of my career. But I just, I'd go out in the warm up and I'd be singing with the physio or like you just work out players in your team that also were the joking type. Because I wouldn't want, if someone was serious, I wouldn't go over and joke with them because I didn't want to disrupt, what they've got going on and how they prepare. But if I knew someone was a joker or they'd appreciate a bit of a sing or a dance or someone in your warm up, you're stretching or whatever, I'd do that. But once I went back into the dressing sheds and the manager or something would say, 3 minutes, give you that call, which means jerseys on, huddle up, like, final chat from your captain, we're on here. I would just get this overwhelming feeling of nerves because I hadn't allowed myself to think about the game all day, and then all of a sudden we're on. I'd quickly go to the bathroom. I'd be sick. Like, I mean, I wouldn't even have to use my finger. I just like it would just sort of these nerves would just hit me, and I just vomit. And I joined the team. I joined the team huddle, and I got like a couple little tears from the vomiting, and my eyes are all red. And I remember like Toulon and Bakkies like, and I get the nod there, and like almost like a bit of a question nod, like, "You good?" And I'll be like, "I'm good." And all the all your teammates eventually just know, like, that's just what Drew does, right? And I just go out there at that point, and I'm like, okay, I'm good to go. And it's not anything other than just the nerves would hit me. The nerves that you would have had throughout small periods of the time throughout the day just hit me at once, and I just go and be sick. And it's not something I consciously was doing. It was just something like like in terms of the sickness part, that just was a consequence of me not thinking about it through the game. But it just also put a big responsibility on me to make sure that I prepared well through the week. So I had the ability and the luxury of not thinking about it through the day of the game because I'd done my analysis, I'd done my homework, I've done my recovery, I've done my physical preparation, all of that. I know the knowledge that I need, and I don't have to think about it on that game until I'm out in the arena and let's go.
You were definitely a fan of Any Given Sunday, the Willie Beeman mindset. There's a lot of players. There's one or two players that I'm not going to mention their name because that's their story to tell. It's exactly the same. Before every single game, throw up in the bin, good to go, machine on the field, unbelievable. And I think which is important to the viewers and the audience listening is that it's about doing the preparation in the week. It's not always what's leading up in that hours to the game, which is going to change the work that has been done in the week, how you slept, how you ate, doing your due diligence, doing your analysis. And I'll be honest, sometimes if I look back at my career now, there were times I was too rigid. Like, for example, if the pre-match meal was shit, I would be upset. I would be super upset. It would impact my game. So, like, I always made sure that I like a packet of M&M's somewhere. So in case the pre-match meal was shit, then I would have a bit of M&M's just to feel me. But I became less rigid when I came to France because obviously the food was different. We were used to pasta and sauces. They just had plain pasta, chicken with no spice.
It's weird. And jambon and a bit of ham.
And then they go. And then obviously having came back from the Springboks, so I rediscovered again peanut butter. So I would have a baguette, peanut butter, banana. And the guys like, why are you eating that? They're like, no, it gives you superpowers. They're like, yeah, you sure? And I had a great game. Following week, everybody was eating it. It was ridiculous.
Well, that's what we had an old S&C coach and at Toulon, and he'd say, he'd always tell us to eat bananas. And we're like, why do you keep telling us to eat so many bananas? He's like, well, you've never seen a weak monkey. I was like, well, fair enough.
Coming back to Toulon. Oh, man. Listen, coming back to Toulon, it's great to see that you guys recently connected. I think it was maybe a few years ago. They created the Hall of Fame.
The Hall of Fame.
You guys, generation, you guys are known as the Galacticos. All the superpowers, different Power Rangers, and almost actually, what's that? Marvel League? I don't know whatever you call it. But anyway, take me back to that time.
There's been a few nicknames,
But take me playing with those amount of players. If you look, one of your teammates is still going. Manono still playing.
Still playing for too long.
Ridiculous. So take me back to that period. That must have been unbelievable playing with so many great players. Brian Abana, the Bakkies, Johnny Wilkinson, Juan Smith.
I mean,
take us back to that.
You go through that team: Donny Rousseau, Ali Williams, Matt Gits, Johnny Wilkinson, Busta, Habano, Halfpenny, the Armitage brothers, Chris Marcelli, Castro Giovanni. The team that we had was crazy, man. Not just the starting 15, but the bench. Of course, Guillaume Garado, he became the French captain. Charles Olivion, who's playing for them now. Tafi Fanua, Xavier Chocky. So we had some really, Sebastian Tier-Sport at 9 as well. Max Memoirs. We had some really strong French players as well, but we just had as well a really strong collective of foreign players, but from different walks. We had Georgians, Momuko Gogodzi, Lavan Chilichava, Kote, and then we had Georgians, we had Fijian boys, we had English, Welsh, South African, Australian, New Zealand, Argentinian. There's going to be some more that I've forgotten, but it brought this dynamic as well. And look, the biggest threat that you have with the squad that we had was just too many egos, right? Like, because arguably you look at that squad and they're just like, a lot of the players in our squad would have been the best player in every one of their own individual teams. And then all of a sudden they're in the same team. Like, there was just a recipe there, if we didn't get it right, for that to completely implode. And I think having Johnny there as as the leader, and everyone just had the utmost respect for Johnny. And Johnny was not someone that abused the respect. He's not someone that demanded the respect. He just earned the respect through his preparation, through the way his application, his mindset, all of that. And then, next to him, you look at Bakkies and Juan Smith and all these players that I've just mentioned. But, mate, the thing for me was, I played against a lot of these guys, whether it was Super Rugby or international rugby. I probably played against every one of them that I eventually played with. I didn't want to be in a team huddle or in a team environment where any one of those players didn't feel like I deserved to be on the field with them. Right. And if that's through my preparation at training, if that's through my performance in a game, I didn't want them, like, even if it wasn't to my face, if it was amongst them, their own sort of, smaller group, and going, oh, fuck, what about Drew? Like, he doesn't deserve it, or, he should be dropped, or whatever. Like, I didn't want to open the gate for that to be a potential conversation that was being had about me. So I think there was just like, and I think there's probably, to varying different degrees. I won't speak on behalf of other people, but I think there was just that mutual respect where you just wanted to earn the right and earn the respect of those players that are in the same huddle as you. And but I miss having a bit of fabric in my arms of a player next to you, and you look around in those final couple of minutes before you play, and you've got that little nod of recognition, like, I've got you, yeah, you've got me. I just got goosebumps just thinking about that now. Just like, so those moments you don't get when you're selling a pub, or like, you might get it, coaching, because you're still part of that sort of atmosphere. But there's very few walks of life where you get that connection, where it's just like this unwritten, like, yeah, I've got you and you got me, and it's special. And it's like, and I just wanted to be in a position in that Toulon team where they were like, they were happy and proud that I was in their team to do it with them. And, we had some, the boys won the European Championship title before I got there. And then my first year, I think Brian's first year as well, we got the double, then we got the Heineken the following year. But we just went on this run, and there was just, I don't know, we didn't do any contact training. Like, nothing in the rocks, no tackling, because Bernard Laporte, he said, there's enough opportunity to get injured in games. I'm not going to put you in the same positions. But he said, if you don't stand up on a weekend and do your job, then we'll do it. Right. And so, like, I'm so motivated to make my tackles. If Juan Smith, like, he's a beast. If he's telling me, come on, Oaks, do your job, like, or, if you've just missed a tackle and you're in a huddle after the try's been scored against you and you get that look, you're like, no worries, I'll make up for this. Like, Dwayne Vermeulen, he's another one that we had as well. Like, all these guys, like
Thor.
Yeah, bro. Like, I mean, I don't know. It was a really unique situation, and I know that a lot of people sort of say, "Oh, it's just all about the money." But, like, bro, like, if you look at the players that played at Toulon and how still connected we are together, but also how connected we are to the club, like, that was a really special time for us in our careers, and I would hope that, sure, players were paid really well to play for Toulon, but I would also hope that through performances they could see that it also meant a hell of a lot for us to represent the region of Toulon, the city, but also the jersey and the colours, but and one another. I think most importantly as well was represent one another, and yeah, bro, it was a fun time.
I think it's very important, myself being as a coach, and we've seen through different sports, especially in football, you can attract all the stars, but it doesn't mean you're going to win trophies. You can have the best, and a lot of people, and even though I played against Toulon Varriers and obviously massive derbies with Toulouse back in the day, I respect the hell out of them because, and a lot of people, especially in France, they will write it off, but they just bought all these players, they didn't build the team. that's the easy cop out, but it
Yeah.
still takes a lot of work. You just mentioned there, you guys are keeping each other accountable, and responsibility was put on the players, and that's massive. It's even harder to really perform when you
In
have
some
all
ways,
these big, because you got to find space for everybody. Because even though in general rugby players are humble, but sometimes guys have stronger characters, potentially borderline egos. But all the players, and there's too many to mention. Is there anybody there, a few players that you can maybe share some of their habits which they had, which you saw took them to another level, or some of their traits, for example?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the obvious one's Johnny, right? Like his application to his craft, and it wasn't just goal kicking. Like goal kicking was obviously something that he just does a lot. Like there'd be times where we'd win a game, he'd kick 6 from 7 off the tee, and we'd be at the post-match function, he'd still be out in the field kicking goals because he missed that one. Johnny's spoken to his own admission that perhaps he was a little bit too rigid around his application and borderline obsession to the process. But it also, like, how could you sit there and not go the extra mile, not do the extra rep, not do the extra bit of training? If you look across, like Johnny trained so bloody hard, mate. And it wasn't just, like I said, the kicking, it was cardio, it was his speed stuff, it was his passing. Like he's just, nothing that Johnny has done and achieved is through accident. Like he's worked for everything, and then you go to another guy like Marnona who comes in and backs would do their gym session, and he'd be like, right at the end of the session, he'd be like, come on, boys. We're like, what? He's like, come on, we'll just go get on the rower. Just the rower. And he'd be like, we'll do 10 sets at 30 on, 30 off. I was like, it's not in our program, because it is me with my relationship with training. He's like, come on, this. I'm like, and again, like if you got someone like Ma telling you, let's go and do it, you're like, it takes 5 minutes, like literally 5 minutes. I'm like, okay, you go and do it. And, so like I just think we all, like, there's also always someone, and there might have been times where I was encouraging the boys, like there's just someone always taking everyone along. And if it wasn't Ma'a, if it wasn't Gits, like Gits Gits still trains every other day, and like he could play probably international footy, like that's just in him. That's just part of his psyche, is he needs to train all the time. But when he was playing, he'd take people with him, or he'd bring you along, and I'd work on my passes with him or my kicking, or and you look across and Ollie Williams and Bakkies are doing line out stuff with the other guys, and like there was just a collective mindset and attitude to, let's just like people. Like we became the hunted pretty quickly. Like by the time I got there, right, like because they won the year before, we were the hunted for a number of years. Everyone, like, every game was like a grand final to the other team. Like, like you go away and you play in Breve, or you go away and play somewhere. That was the one that they wanted, right? And so like every game was like, I mean, it's different, right? It's weird because every game in Super Rugby is kind of like that, but with the longer seasons in France and the way that they rotate squads and away games and the psyche around home and away games. But yeah, I mean, so we just there was just always someone there that just was taking others with them, and you just had too much respect for them just to go, nah, bro, I'm not doing that. So yeah, I mean, it was a, like, I mean, there's footage of Johnny Wilkinson. I think it's half time of our final against Cast, or semi-final against Cast. It's a speech, right? You look, just if you go on YouTube, you watch this clip, and Johnny goes from speaking French one line, English, French, English, French, English, and just look at how engaged every player is. Right, like again, I've got goosebumps just thinking about it.
I'm getting goosebumps here. Yeah. I didn't even play for
like, yeah, but like for his ability to have everyone, to capture everyone, absolute focus and attention, because of the respect that he'd earned and the respect that he held amongst his peers, and also just how much it meant to us in that moment. Like, and for him to be able to do that in multiple languages and drop in and out, but still maintain that, man. Like there was just a really cool. I don't know if I could do it justice by putting into words in terms of the layers of respect that we had for each other and for the coaching staff and for the town and the city and the jersey. Like it was, it was a really cool experience, man.
Wow. That's impressive. This is what I love about podcasting, hearing the stories and, having those moments, experiencing it. And something which you touch base on, and that's the foundation of a great culture: the respect. The
Yeah.
respect towards your teammates, the respect for your environment, the respect for your club, for the work that you're doing, respect for yourself. That's it. What it is at the end of the day. And
Yeah.
wow, it's great to see that insights, because you know what, and this is what I'm trying to achieve with this podcast, that people know.
Mm.
Like, say a team like Toulon, they were successful not because of the stars that they had. They were successful
Yeah.
because of the habits, the buying, the respect
Yeah.
that you guys had for each other,
Yeah.
which is brilliant. We're coming towards the end of the. I've got one or two more
Sure.
questions that I want to go through, which is
Nice.
very important. And I've done my in-depth research, and you spoke about being locked in, and years ago, I'm not sure about the dates, but you were quite locked into the New York Marathon.
Oh
So
yeah.
apparently, so if you could take us through that story, your preparation for it, and also
Yeah. Well,
your recovery after that.
yeah. So this was I think it was 2018. So it was just about a little bit over, about a year and a half after I retired. And I just thought, look, again, because of my relationship with training, I thought I'd like to get at least one marathon out. And I think it's better for me to do it closer to my retirement than further down the track, right? Because I don't know whether my body was going to go or whatever. And so I committed probably early in the year, like Jan or Feb, that I'm going to do the New York Marathon, put it on my socials. Yeah, I'm going to do this. But bro, you don't run that until like November, December, right? Like, so it's it's a long time. And like anything, you get excited for something. And I was running heaps early, but I just got so over it. Like, it's a lot. Like, running training's one is boring, right? It's long, it's boring, it takes a lot of time, and it's hard, right? There's a lot of head noise. You got. I never didn't run with headphones because I didn't want to, the voice telling me to stop and slow down, all that sort of stuff started getting really loud. But I started going really hard. I had a good friend of mine, Peter Playford, who played a little bit actually with the Waratahs and the Brumbies. But he would come and knock on my door, wake me up in the morning, let's go. And then eventually it kind of got to the point. I did a couple of half marathons, and the last half marathon I did would have been in May, right? And I'm not running until November. But I just burnt myself too hard too early in my preparation. Anyway, we flew over to New York, and Pete flew over with me off his own bat, and his job was to get me to the start line. We got there, it was Halloween, so we went out, had a big night. Second night, went out, had a big night, and then then I woke up and I was like, all right, it's the day before the New York Marathon. I went and got my bib, did all that sort of stuff, registered, all that. And I said, Pete, we've just got to have a quiet night, get a big pre-game meal of pasta, just give me that fuel for tomorrow. And we go down and we see on all these bright lights, Derek Lewis and Daniel Cormier are fighting at the Madison Square Garden in the UFC. We're like, okay, well, we've got to go to that. So we got got tickets, went to that, got home at about 3 in the morning after a big night, and I had to get on the ferry to Staten Island at 5:30. So I'm only a good 2 hours of sleep. Get the ferry across. Yeah, get the ferry across. That's where Pete just sort of waved. My mate Pete just waved. He just got me to the ferry. I went over there by myself, and then didn't realize I had probably about 3 hours or something on Staten Island before my wave of people started. And it was freezing cold. All your phones are disabled over there. You can't use your phone because of like previous things that have happened in marathons over there that they disable your mobile phones. So I sat in a portaloo, like one of those little plastic toilets, right? Just because it's the warmest place I could get for probably 2 hours, just like this. Like, man, just regretting the night that I had before. Anyway, did the marathon. I think I know what you're getting towards in terms of the night after. And so, well, I finished the marathon just over 4 hours or something. So, look, I was never going to win it. I was actually very lucky to finish it. But I go home that night, couldn't move. I'm done. Right. Next day, get up, 10 a.m., Bloody Marys. Let's celebrate. I'm one of those wankers that was wearing his medal the day after, just because it was my night to celebrate. We end up, 10 a.m. we'd go out, whatever, and we end up having a big night. And I think came home for a little bit, got changed, whatever, went back out. And we were carrying on like I'd won the marathon, bro. Like we had all the champagne and the sparklers and the fireworks and all sorts of stuff. Congratulations, Drew. These, the girls that work at the nightclub are walking around. Congratulations, Drew. Like, I mean, it was fun at the time, but you look back and it's like, oh, what was I thinking? Anyway, I'm paying this bill, which was very expensive. Anyway, I'm paying a bill and this guy walks past me and it was Busta Rhymes, right? And I went, oh, said g'day, and he goes, "Don't fucking touch me, bro." And I said, "No, listen, bro, like I'm sorry, like I'm just a fan." He goes, "Fuck you," and I went, "Oh, look, no, look, I'm sorry, I'm just a fan." And then he just said, "Fuck you, you white ass bitch." And I just went, "Listen," and I had these like my prescription glasses on, right, like little clear frames, looking like the Milky Bar kid, right? I'm not going to hurt anyone. I've never, still to this day, ever been in a fight, right?
Yeah.
And I still don't stand for that. Like, I was like, you don't talk to people like that. So I chased him out the front. At this point, my mate Pete, he's come out and followed us. He's employed the support, the help and the support of a gentleman on the street there to just to kind of to back us up. I'm engaging in this verbal with Busta Rhymes, and I start this sort of verbal. Trying to get all these people were trying to usher him into a couple of those big sort of black Escalades. And I just said, at one point, I just said, all you've ever done is pimp a few people's rides. Now, of course, that's exhibit, right? I got my rappers mixed up, and he lost it, bro. Like, and he just charged at me.
Boy.
And all the garbage bags on the side of the road, like for the curbside pickup, they were all there. We kind of grabbed each other. There were no punches thrown at this point. Like, we're just tripping over the garbage. Security came in, my mate came in, and it all kind of, we got separated and stuff. And the security just sort of said, "Look, like, we watched the whole thing. He's being a dick, but it only takes one person in his crew to pull a gun out just to want to move up." And like, we don't think about that here in Oz, right? Like the gun laws and stuff. Like, we don't have that mentality of like, sure, there might have been a scrap and someone might have punched on or whatever, but we just like, it doesn't come to our psyche in terms of someone's going to pull a gun on you. In hindsight, it was a very stupid thing for me to do. I should have just let him say what he said and move on. In fact, I shouldn't have been out that late. But you know me, like I have a hard time of knowing when to go home. But anyway, it was one of those things. A friend of mine later, he's a DJ here, and his name's Hugo. He was playing at Coachella one year, and he ran into Busta Rhymes in the artist area. And he got Busta Rhymes to send a couple of videos going, "I want to see you, Drew." You guys, sending me, Busta Rhymes sending me this video. It was actually pretty cool.
Goodness.
But yeah, mate, silly things to do when you involve massive amounts of fatigue, dehydration, and alcohol.
Oh man, listen here. I have so many more questions, but this podcast has been brilliant so far, and by just adding more, it won't do it justice. I know when to call it quits. It has been brilliant, and thanks for sharing everything and just being brutally honest and raw about everything, and that's what makes it brilliant. That's what I love about podcasting. But I have one last question. This is the final question.
Sure.
At some stage, we're all gonna pass on to a higher plane, and if you have to be reincarnated and come back as a prop one day, who would it be?
As a prop, as a current or a former prop?
Current or former, your choice.
Oh, I mean, I've had some good times off the field with you too. You know what? I think I have to go with my mate Martin Castro Giovanni.
Oh,
I
Castro.
just think. I mean, look, I got to know him. Obviously, with our time at Toulon, I got to know him on a personal level. He'd actually just visited here in the summer, and like he was sort of down this part of the world, and he made sure he came to Sydney just to catch up with myself and Matt. Like we've got a special relationship. But I also just like, Castro's Castro, right? Like, some of the things he got in trouble for around, the stuff that he said around Cockerell, or, flying on the private jet with the Paris Saint-Germain guys with Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Like he was unhinged. But he's unapologetically himself. I love that about him. He could play the game, and he was someone that deeply cared about his teammates. I've got a lot of time and a lot of respect for Castro, but I mean, I would say him purely because he's probably also or him and also Levan Chilachava from Georgia. They're the two props I think I've probably had the most time with and connected too much. You know, Levan Chilachava, just a really quick one on him. So when I got to Toulon, I was a bit overweight, right? I hadn't played or trained in 3 months or something because the Wallabies wouldn't give me a release and I kind of just blew out a bit. And I flew over and Levan's, he's a Georgian boy. He's kind of bald and receding and he's got his beard and he's a hairy man and whatever. And he would say to Matt, like I'd sit down towards the back of the bus with my seat. And he would say to Matt Giddo, he said, "Hey, Matt, tell your friend, I don't speak to him until he lose 5 kilo. He too fat. He too fat." And I'm thinking, and I'm like, bro, like one, he's probably telling the truth. But two, I'm like, I'm just going to cop it from this old Georgian guy. Like he's an old guy. He's balding. He's a hairy old guy. I'll just cop it out of respect, right? I won't bite back. I reckon about 5 weeks later, I realised that Levan's about 7 years younger than me. I was like, hang on a minute. I thought you were older than me. That's why I gave you the respect and didn't say anything. But he ended up turning out to be like one of my really close mates. And when my mum and dad would spend time over in Toulon, they got along really well. And even so much so in 2015 at the World Cup, when the Wallabies weren't playing during the week, when the Georgian team would play, Levan would give my parents tickets, and my mum and dad would go and watch Levan. And so like, those two are probably the two props I probably had the strongest connection with over my time. So I'd say one of those two boys.
Oh, but I bumped into Levan when was it, about 2 years ago? We obviously played cast, and he's now towards the end of his career. But what a beast and what a legend!
Yeah,
and, he actually, I think his first game was against me in the final of top 14. He was 19 years old.
Yeah, but he wouldn't have looked 19.
Nah, but and obviously it wasn't the great experience for him because we destroyed them. But he always talks about it. It just once again shows, you have to go through the tough times. But he became a real menace in top 14. And
Bro, he was
actually,
good,
I watched him the other day. It was actually in the beginning of the year. He was water boy. And I actually wanted to send him a message. I was impressed to see how he was running across the field with so much speed and finesse. It was brilliant.
Well, just a really quick one on Levan. Yeah. I had a reminder pop up on Instagram it was actually a little while ago now, but he got the ball on this turnover and he tried to gridiron pass it out over to the wing to me. And it went about 8 meters forward. And he was just like, and I said in the comments, I said, "Sorry, bro, I should have been flatter. It's my fault." But but that's just Levan. I love Levan. He's a good man.
Oh man!
Anyway, you could tell we could do this all night or all day.
We can do that. We can go for 4 hours. Really this can go into a Joe Rogan show. No, but it's awesome, and this is what I love about podcasting, touching base and hearing your stories, what you've been through, and I just want to say thanks, man. I think we come from a generation where. We know we might have been at opposite sides, when it came to teams, but we always found that time to connect. And I remember, I think it was the first time I ever saw yourself and Gits. It was in this pub or bar somewhere in Australia, and we were like, "What are these Aussies doing here?" And then we actually had a good night, had a good chat. That had started guys like Ali Williams, Corey Flynn. And that's rugby enough to talk about. And unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But guys like Jerry Collins, he always looked after us when we were in the Wellington. That's what that rugby is all about. But before we sign off, I just want to say thanks to everybody that's supporting me on the podcast, on the Coach G show. But also, I want you to check out my private community, the Scrum Dominator Mindset. All you have to do is check the link in the description below, or you can just DM me the words community on my Instagram page. Brother Drew, it's been unbelievable. Looking forward to catch up with the other two Musketeers, Gits, and pass on my best wishes. Is there anybody you would like to give a shout out to? Everybody would like to say hi to? Anything before we close things off?
Bro, you know what? I genuinely just thank you for hustling. I know that it's been pretty hard to tie me down, and I'm super happy that we've had this time to catch up. But I'd love to be able to make sure we do this in person. So next time I'm up that part of the world, I'll reach out and we do that. So hopefully maybe there's an opportunity in the November Test series over in Twickenham or something, or anyway we'll be up that part of the world potentially. So if we do, I'll make sure. But otherwise I think it's doesn't matter what level it's at, whether it's community, schoolboy or girl, community level, club or international. It's about connection. It's about the respect that you have for the people you play with and against, and genuinely, I just think there's just some sort of bond there that like we wouldn't have caught up for that many years. And just look at us conversing now. It's like it's been great to catch up, and it's just something that kind of keeps you bound through the shared experiences and also through things that we've all been through and are still going through. So no, I just think it doesn't matter about what level you got to. The game is unique and it's a special one, and it's the same at all levels.
It's crazy to see how conversation has changed. Before our conversations wouldn't be very long. It was like, another beer, mate, Jaeger bomb, mate. Yeah, let's go. And we're talking an hour and a half long. Yeah. Listen, brother, thanks for joining me, and all of the best your side, and take care of yourself. Chat soon.
No worries.
Ciao, ciao.
Thanks, bro.
Bye-bye.